Today's episode of the Heart of Giving podcast is part of a special series we call Made by the Bay. During these episodes, we get to feature amazing people in the Bay Area who are shaping the social landscape of that community. We're grateful for the generous support of Tipping Point community for making these episodes possible.
You're listening to the Heart of Giving podcast with Art Taylor, powered by bbbgive.org. Here we explore the motivations that form the basis of giving and service. We inspire generosity and celebrate the transformative effects that giving and service have on the human spirit and on community. The conversations featured on the podcast also uncover giving strategies that educate and provide tools to help listeners make impactful gifts of both their time and money. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Heart of Giving podcast, powered by bbbgive.org. Give.org is the nation's standards-based charity evaluator, and it's your one-stop source for information on giving and reports on the most asked about charities. I'm Art Taylor. Today, we're going to speak to Maritza Maldonado. Maritza is the founder and CEO of Amigos de Guadalupe, which is an organization operating in the San Francisco Bay Area, working to help young people of disadvantaged backgrounds improve their educational outcomes. And she does this by providing wraparound services that support them and their families so that their educational attainment is possible. We're going to talk with Maritza about her life. We're going to talk with her about her work. And more importantly, we're going to talk about her passion for making a difference in the Bay Area and indeed in our country. Maritza, welcome to the Heart of Giving podcast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Maritza, tell us about the work you're doing at Amigos de Guadalupe Center for Justice and Empowerment.
Sure, my pleasure. We are a place-based agency in East San Jose. We are a working class community. We are part of Silicon Valley. We are your nannies and your dishwashers and your cooks and your bus drivers and your gardeners and your nonprofit workers and teachers. And we are the people that keep the machine humming of Silicon Valley. We are the backbone. We are the essential workers of Silicon Valley.
So Maritza, tell us about how you go about doing that work to help these people become viable, particularly in an area that is home to some of the wealthiest people in the world and some of the highest costs.
Yeah, we talk about Tale of Two Cities here in San Jose. We have millionaires are made every day here, and so what we saw with the pandemic and is what we see every day is that poverty hits us every day. And what we do know is that the reality of poor communities of color, not only in San Jose, but throughout this nation, got hit the hardest with COVID. And so it literally cut a line through the city of San Jose back to us in East San Jose. And there was no more denying that inequities exist because of that. So our work is really about trying to uplift those voices, beating the drum every single day, and trying to have our elected officials and people of goodwill really support the work that we do tirelessly every day on behalf of our community.
So let's talk about the services themselves. What type of work and services are you actually providing on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So we provide education work. We lead with our education work. We do after school. We do summer school. We provide mentorship and also scholarships, mainly to first generation folks. We provide rental assistance and also financial assistance. We provide immigration legal services. We, for a community that is an immigrant community here, we provide housing. So we run one emergency shelter called Casitas Esperanza, Tiny Homes of Hope. And we provide we run two interim hotels, one 60 rooms, one 45 rooms, and we do the work all for families. So individuals with their kids or parents or grandparents raising their children. And then we provide ESL and citizenship classes. And we believe that getting our folks through the pipeline and becoming citizens and becoming voters is part of our democracy that we want for all of our folks here in our community.
So, Maritza, I want to hold up something you said in the beginning of the interview, which was that you are the essential workers that make Silicon Valley go. And I'm just curious what your thoughts would be if these folk weren't available. What would Silicon Valley actually be if it weren't for the people who you're serving?
I think Silicon Valley would not be Silicon Valley, right? I think we can look at California, we can look at Silicon Valley, but there are Silicon Valleys throughout this nation. And I think we can point to those across the nation. I think what's really important is that people understand the importance of the essential worker and what they contribute to the economy, and mainly what did they contribute to Silicon Valley. My dad was a janitor and mopped and cleaned and buffed those floors in those uh, Silicon Valley high tech companies. So I know the profile. I know the worker. I saw it at home, and this is who we serve. And unfortunately, we have not valued our essential workers in the manner that we should be valuing them. Mainly the resources that should be given. Look, when the pandemic hit, people came into my office and I had to sit across from them, and they're saying, I have no money to bury my loved one. This is Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley. I have no money to bury my loved ones. So literally, I'm scrambling, trying to find. Okay, well, we can give you $1,000, right? I'm calling up friends, saying, "Hey, do you have some money that you can?" Because people are coming in, and this is a common story that we were hearing over and over. So it's been tough for our community, and it wasn't just a pandemic. It's years of social and racial inequities that have plagued East San Jose, and we have been the most under-resourced community in East San Jose, and we'll continue to uplift those voices through our work.
So, Maritza, where did your passion for this work come from? I mean, you mentioned your father and how he worked in these office buildings. I know in my case, my mother worked 37 years in the kitchen of a department store. And we watched her go to work every day, never complaining, just happy to have a job. And seeing that had an influence on me. It gave me a certain respect and appreciation for people who are these essential workers who are enriching our lives and the lives of others just by going to work and providing that service. I knew, for instance, that I was going to be as much of a support to those folk that I could be because I saw what she did and how she supported other people. I wonder if that is true for you too. Did that have an impact on how you view the people that you're serving right now?
Absolutely. So I am quite fortunate to look out my window and I could actually see the street that I grew up on. And so um, that is what fuels my passion. I am first generation Mexican American in this country. My parents immigrated legally to this country. Not to say that that other people haven't done it legally, but I think it's important to mention because I think at the time when my parents immigrated, there was opportunity for immigration from Mexico. Mexico is now one of the countries that have the lowest number of people allowed to immigrate legally into this country. So my dad was sponsored, came over to this country. My mother came later, and 6 kids later, here we are. And so I think my passion for the immigrant community came from them. Being able to grow up in this community that you don't have to assimilate, right? That this community that is mainly immigrant, newly arrived immigrants to this country, a place where people don't have to assimilate right away, don't have to learn the language right away, that the food is familiar, the music is familiar to them is a beautiful thing. And so what I did see growing up was my father struggling to learn English. My mother was a seasonal cannery worker, so we the Valley of Heart's Delight here in California. The orchards were literally our playground here, and so what I do know is that um, the passion for the inequities that existed when I was growing up over generations continue. And so it should not be. And I feel really strongly that the only way that this happens, that we give truth to power and that we lift up voices and more importantly, that we center our work with the people, that they find their own voice and they speak their own truth to power. And that's really the work that we do every day. And that's where my passion comes from. It's about what we all deserve, right? And what we all want for all of our family members. We're no different than anyone else.
So you mentioned COVID, and I'm just curious how your organization was impacted by that and what was it able to do to sort of support people during that very difficult time?
So our community in East San Jose was hit the hardest of any community. Gilroy was the other one that's a couple of miles south of us, but here in San Jose, our East Side community was hit the hardest. What we did was as part of the collective, the CSIPWA, the collective, the 5 agencies really started having weekly calls to see what our response was going to be, knowing that, all of us were hearing the stories of people in the hospital and people intubated and people losing their lives. And we started talking about, okay, we have promotoras, we have people that do this work already. Can we get and these are neighborhood people, these are people that live in the neighborhood. Let's get them out there door knocking and telling them, hey, you need to get tested. Here's where you go to get tested. You need to get vaccinated. Here's where you go to get vaccinated. And what we knew was that there wasn't a site in East San Jose, so we advocated. There was a site set up down the way, and people weren't accessing it. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So drove over just to see why, people weren't accessing this site. And there was a big badge that said, "You are now entering a police facility." And I thought, that could be why people weren't accessing. So we pushed our elected officials to actually open up a site here at the Mexican Heritage Plaza, which is literally at the corner. We were very, very fortunate in the fact that our city officials, immediately supported the idea and were able to open up a testing site. And literally that testing site, the lines were literally wrapped around the corner because our folks actually now had a place to walk to that they felt safe and trusted. And thanks to the partnerships of Gardner Health Services, who is literally down the way, that brought those resources to our community. And then food distribution was the other major thing. So the Mexican Heritage Plaza, the School of Arts and Culture there that do art and culture for our community, became a food distribution site. Vegelution, who runs our organic farm, were literally boxing hundreds of thousands of boxes to deliver to our community. So our response was a coordinated effort. Our door knocking became a model for the county of Santa Clara. We continue to get funding for that work to get our folks out there knowing about resources, especially around health. So we were really proud of that work.
Well, Maritza, I'm aware that you had family members and friends impacted by COVID. In particular, your sister, who you lost to COVID. I know that had to be a very difficult period for you.
Yeah, very, very tough. I think I can actually talk about it without crying now. My sister, Miriam, was a retired social worker. She did that her entire career, and then decided to come and work for Amigos, volunteer actually for Amigos. She was our ESL and our citizenship teacher, and believed strongly in the power of voting, and wanted to get the majority of our folks through her ESL and citizenship classes to register people to vote. And part of what we did when the pandemic hit was we stopped in-person classes. We did not shut our doors. We were one of the few agencies that didn't. Again, being a place-based agency, we knew that our community needed us more than ever. And so what Miriam did was she started calling up her students and seeing, what their needs were, how they were doing, and it was very early on. We didn't know much about COVID. There was no vaccine. There was no, booster. We knew very little about COVID. And Miriam took it upon herself to go and start dropping off groceries for families. She took her own money and would go and deliver groceries, and she did that because she kept saying, she said, they have no one. And they were seniors for the most part. And she kept saying they have no one, and they need food, and what are they going to do? And she would cry about it, right? And I just said, please don't go. We don't know what this virus is. Oh, I'm going to go. And she contracted COVID. And I think, and we've heard these stories, right, that I think the hardest thing for any family was that we couldn't be with our loved ones. and what that actually means, right? And so, our Catholic faith talks a lot about, you know, um, the anointing of the sick, and so calling up our priest and having the nurse put, you know, the iPad in front of her, and having our priest give Miriam the anointing of the sick over video was just devastating for us. So I a lot of lessons learned, but more importantly, I think this was it made me understand and empathize that, we're no different than the people that we serve. And I was able to connect with people when they would come in and talk about their loved ones and the pain that they went through, in a way different way than I hadn't. But Miriam lives on in the work that we do every single day, and we show up. And her daughter is now the ESL teacher and the citizenship teacher, and so that's truly the work of Amigos. Our slogan is "Tienes amigos?" Do you have friends? And obviously, we do.
Maritza, I'm really sorry about your sister and all those who were close to you who were impacted by this terrible, terrible pandemic. Really sorry. Well, I also just want to I mean, obviously, you do this work because there's a certain amount of joy that you get from it as well. What were some of the more joyful moments that you've had and that you experience doing this work on a day to day
Yeah,
basis?
we get lots of joy doing. I wouldn't be doing this work if I didn't get joy out of doing this. I think what we get the most joy, or I get the most joy from, is that I can see the impact that we're making, and that we hire our own people from our own communities. So the young people that we support through scholarships, we invest in them. We support them through the 4 years. We have one young man that's actually in his third year medical school at Stanford University. And so those are our successes, right? We have these beautiful success stories. My director of finance was in the first cohort of scholarships that we gave, and he went off to University of Chicago, and the kid could write his ticket anywhere, and he chose to come back and serve his community. That's the joy. That's the joy. And at my age, look, the reality is that at my age, my work is about building up these young people to be the most powerful people that we want them to be, to change the world. And that's the joy that I get every day.
Wow, impressive, impressive. Maritza, I wanted to ask you about the work and the extent of the problem, and essentially, what would it take for you to meet the full extent of the problem? I know that you're not able currently to reach everyone who needs help, but what would it take for you to actually do that? Maybe some collaborations with others. What would you do? How would that happen?
I've done a lot of thinking about this. When I embarked on this journey 10 years ago, I had no clue of what I was doing, but I knew that I was being called to this work. That I can tell you. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I needed to do this work. We were incubated at my lifelong church, and the pastor said one day, "Hey, I need you." And so this whole idea of nonprofit and starting a nonprofit came up. And so it was mainly because just looking at the needs of our community. So I think the ongoing need of our community has been, historically under under resourced community. And so um, when I started Amigos, I also knew that we had other agencies within 3 mile radius of each other and doing similar work, and went to each of them and said, do we need a basic need nonprofit? And B, can we figure out how to work together? Because we were all applying for the same funding, the same, as I said at the time, the same measly $10,000 grants that they have us walk on water for, right? And everyone said yes. And out of that was born what's called the CSIP Puede Collective. We are 5 agencies working in the community. We have gotten national grant to do some of our work, but we're also committed to looking at best practices and models. And part of what we'll be doing in March is going to New York to visit Harlem's Children's Zone and learn from Jeffrey Canada's work, and looking at how we can become uh, the Harlem's Children's Home of the West here in Mayfair, and just starting that. We're going to be inviting some of our most influential folks, our city council folks, our mayor, our county board of soups, and our educators, and we're bringing some of our community along for learning with us, because what we do know is the importance of decision makers and how that can actually happen. So our work that we've started is block by block, door by door, getting to know our neighbors and moving that work forward. So I think what we need is just resources, not only monetarily, but really thinking partners with us that say, hey, I know what questions to ask folks, what type of data we should be gathering to actually make this happen. Um, I am a believer in what we can do. I know what a community given the will to dream, because so many of us have not had that opportunity because we're working 2 and 3 and 4 jobs, right, to keep food on the table and to keep housing, a roof over our heads. And the reality is that San Jose is now the most expensive city in the nation. So we work hard every day. So I think those are the types of things that we need. We need housing. So we're actually looking at different ways of acquiring housing. We need jobs that pay a decent wage. We need elected officials to look at resourcing and prioritizing poor communities of color. And then we need policies that support our immigrants. We need immigration reform to happen in this country, and will no longer settle for just Band-Aids of DACA, which we don't even know will exist, but we need true immigration reform that will actually help our community in the most important way, which will give them some status to get a decent wage job, so families don't have to work 3 and 4 jobs.
Maritza, one of the reasons I really like doing this podcast is that I get to talk to people like you, people who are 250% committed to making change and to seeing lives in their communities improve. I go off on this riff sometimes and I talk about people who want to start nonprofits. And I say, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for a person to start a nonprofit from scratch. It's really hard work, near impossible in many cases, but yet people do it. They get out there and they try it and they get a little success. Maybe they fall back and then they get a little bit more success and they get some support. And ultimately, something is produced that makes a difference in their communities. And if you were to go back over these last 10 years, at what point did you get to maybe a place where you said, I don't know if this is going to work. This is more than I bargained for. And at what point did you actually say, I don't know? And what was it really that got you past that so that you could be successful in what you are today?
Ooh, loaded question. So first of all, I'm driven by my faith, period. That I know without a shadow of a doubt that I'm doing my life's work. I'm doing what I'm called to do. And that I have just been the vehicle. And I have, it's very clear to me who I am and what I do and why I'm here. And then I will tell you a story that I have not ever shared publicly, but we were incubated at the church that I grew up in. My family were founding members of the church. It's the largest church in East San Jose. The pastor that tapped me and said, I need support, left. And we got a new pastor. And the pastor was very unsure of me, very unsure of Amigos. And were asked to leave the church. And actually we actually got an eviction notice. And so as painful as that time was, it was a real point of really questioning myself and saying, okay, we could either, close the doors and say, hey, it was a nice run. Or we could say, all right, kick me out of my church. It's okay. It's okay. And it's okay because it wasn't about me. It was never about me. And I think the lessons learned was that you can't pray the ills of the world away. We can't. And I'm a woman of faith. Our work and what we're called to do and what the Gospel of Matthew tells us is feed the hungry, clothe the naked. And you can't pray that away. So that was the test, right? That was a test for me. That was a test of my own faith. That was a test of my church. That was a test of this agency. And there were a group of 3 of us at the time. We're close to 60 employees now. And I chose, one of my employees said, hell, if we have to work out of our cars and give resources out of our car, we'll do it. And so that journey was the most hurtful and the most learning that I ever had in my life, and also my own walk of faith and trust that that the work wasn't ever about me. And so I think, I chose to answer that, and like I said, this is the first time I've ever spoken publicly about it, just because um, it was extremely painful, but more importantly, um, this not only happens here, it has happened. There are other instances where power over people, as opposed to power with, um, plays a real integral role in who we are. And our faith is tested every single day. How we do and how we show up is tested every day. And we chose to dust ourselves off and keep going. And here we are.
Amen to that. Now, there's one other question that I forgot to ask, and it's about the event that you just had. Tell us about it.
Yeah, thank you. We recently celebrated our 10th year anniversary, and very excited about that. Like I said, we didn't know if we would be around in 10 years, and just really proud of the work that we did. We also are our native son here in San Jose, and East San Jose is Cesar Chavez, and what we uplifted was his house came up for sale, and literally a couple of blocks down from our office, and we were able to actually buy the home of Cesar Chavez to preserve it for our
Wow.
community and our young people here in East San Jose. So we were able to uplift that at our 10th anniversary, and share that for generations to come. We're in the process of doing community meetings to see what community wants to see in this space, right? And we just had a couple of weeks ago our first community meeting, and lots of wonderful ideas. So, even though we're the owners, we say we are the stewards of this place, and so that was a beautiful story to be able to be told in our 10th anniversary, and just proud as a young person, seeing. Father McDonald and Fred Ross and Sal Alinsky and Cesar Chavez, as a young person, literally knocking on doors, and hearing those stories, and seeing the power of organizing and what organizing can do for a community. So that was what we uplifted at our 10th anniversary, that the power of the people continue, and that we as marginalized communities will not stop till resources are distributed equitably in our community.
Wow, Maritza, I just want to thank you for sharing this amazing story about your life and about the work that you're doing to make difference in this community. And I want to just say to you, you will be in my thoughts and in my prayers, because I believe that there are many more people out there who you're going to help, and many more lives that you're going to change for the better. So we want to keep your faith at its height and at the center of everything that you're doing. I am with you, and please reach out and let me know if there's ever anything I can do to be helpful. And to any of you listening, reach out to Maritza at this amazing organization, Amigos de Guadalupe, and see what you can do to be supportive as well.
Thank you, Art. Thank you for allowing me to share my story and uplift the community of East San Jose. And I want to say that our full name is Amigos de Guadalupe Center for Justice and Empowerment. And the justice and empowerment work is what we lead with every single day. So just thank you for having me and allowing me to share my story.
So you all have just heard an amazing story. And if that doesn't get you inspired to continue the work that you're doing, or if you're on the fence, to get off the fence and into the game, then I don't know what will. Thank you, Maritza. Thank you, Amigos de Guadalupe Center for Justice and Empowerment. And to all of you who are listening, if this is the first time that you've heard one of our podcasts, I hope you'll listen to future ones and some past ones that you can find on all major podcast platforms. And if you want to support the podcast, please do so by making a donation at give.org, and we will put that to great use, I can promise you. Thank you for listening.
You've just listened to the Heart of Giving podcast with Art Taylor. Be sure to tune in next time for a brand new episode. To listen to our other interviews, visit heartgiving.podbean.com. That's heartgiving.podbean.com. Subscribe to our show on major podcast platforms. The thoughts and opinions expressed on this podcast are the views and opinions of the guests, not those of the BBB Wise Giving Alliance or program affiliates. This podcast is for information and educational purposes only and is copyrighted with all rights reserved. This podcast is protected by Podbean's terms of service.